I'm Ray Hanania, and I'm interviewing a person that I've known almost all my life, a great attorney, someone who's carved out a niche that does so much good for people in our society that need a lot of help. My friend, attorney Jeffery Leving. Jeffrey, how are you?
I'm doing great today, and it's great to be talking to you again.
Now, Jeffrey, you specialize in dad's rights. And I know for our listeners and people who are watching this, dad's right, your website is dadsrights.com. And tell us, what does dad's rights mean? I mean, I think I know what it is. People may know what it is, but you've been in this business fighting for fathers and dads. Tell us what it means to you.
It means gender equality. It means social justice, due process, equal protection. It means that we have to focus on the survival of our society so fathers are not franchised from their children and kicked out of the lives of their children, because fathers are critical. And there's statistics in my first book that I wrote many years ago to back this up. Fathers are parents too. And when a dad gets divorced, that doesn't mean he's divorced from his children.
A lot of people in our society automatically assume that the mother or the woman has the predominant right. So there's this built-in thing from when we're kids that you stay with your mother, the mother takes care of the children. That I never thought of it until we talked a number of times that really disenfranchises a father when a family might break up, and it really causes them a great loss, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It even impacted me and my family as a child. When I was younger, growing up on the south side of Chicago, my parents were divorced, and my dad, I felt, was disenfranchised. My brother ended up in an orphanage, and there was sort of a hole in the family without the consistency of paternal involvement. And that's when I first realized that fathers are parents too, and children need dads.
Is the law built to discriminate, so to speak, against fathers when it comes to separation and divorce?
I believe the answer to that is yes, things are changing. When I was on President Obama's National Finance Committee, that's exactly what I told him. And we discussed that, and we discussed a factual basis to my feelings about legislative initiatives that have created laws that were very harmful to fathers, paternal involvement, and our society.
And again, for our listeners, my guest is Jeffery Leving, and his website is dadsrights.com, where you can go to get information about him. Your law firm, do you specialize in defending and working with fathers, or representing, I should say? I'm not a lawyer. I should have been like you. We've lived together on the Southeast side, but is your specialty in the Illinois area only, or do you do cases around the country? Give us a little description of your law firm, how big it is, and who you serve.
I concentrate in matrimonial and family law. I also defend fathers that are falsely accused. I also help dads and children who are victims of catastrophic injuries. We have about 22 lawyers in this law firm, and we handle cases all over the United States. I love Chicago, I love Illinois, but I've handled cases in California, in Florida, in Minnesota, in Indiana, in Massachusetts. So I've handled cases throughout the US, but my home is Chicago. But there are fathers that are struggling nationally as well as their children.
So they can reach out to you regardless of where they're at in the country.
Absolutely. I'll never forget fighting to help reunite Elian Gonzalez with his father in Cuba many years ago, but it's a case that I'll never forget. It's very dear to my heart.
And what do you tell fathers when they come to you and they say, I haven't been able to see my kids, I've been in a divorce. There's a lot of anger between us, my ex-wife and I. What do you tell them to help them and get them started on this road to equal rights?
The first thing I need to do is develop a bond so I can get the factual information I need to define the issues, because not every case is the same.
Right.
But I always tell these dads, don't give up hope. As my friend Reverend Jesse Jackson said frequently, keep hope alive. And that's what I have to do, because if my clients give up hope and throw in the towel, they may lose a chance to protect their children, reconnect with their children, and do everything possible so their children could have a great childhood, a great future.
What's the first thing a father who is divorced should not do?
Generally, don't leave the home. I mean, there are exceptions to the rule, but if a father, for example, is a victim of physical, emotional abuse, and he has children, and he walks out of the home and leaves the children there, when there's a likelihood they are also being victimized, then the father's walking away, but the children end up targets looking for an arrow. So it's really, really risky for fathers just to walk out, especially when their children are at risk. And also when they do that, it establishes the status quo, mother's the custodial parent. Now, there's always exceptions to the rule, but generally it's not a good idea to walk away, especially if by walking away, you're leaving your children in an abusive and dangerous environment of victimization.
Is it hard to counter the stereotype that men are tougher and stronger and women are the victims? I can see when you come into the situation that in divorce, that women seem to have, the mothers seem to have stronger positions, in the view and perception of society. Is that a challenge to tell people that no, that's not the case, that husbands, wives, fathers, mothers are actually equal and are the same and they should have the same?
Well, it depends who the judge is, but it's generally an uphill battle, but things are changing. I remember a judge I spoke to once where it was clear that a child was a victim of abuse because the mother's boyfriend, whom she was living was abusing the child, and the judge said, "Well, she's the mother. She's the mother. The child should be with the mother." And I
Right.
couldn't, and I was trying to convince him that the mother's boyfriend was an abuser. We had to think about the child. It had nothing to do with gender, but there are people that can't make correct decisions protecting children because of gender. I believe it was Margaret Mead once said years ago, fathers are biological necessities, but social accidents. Completely disagreeable. I'm completely disagreeable to that. No parent is a biological necessity and a social accident because of gender, male or female.
Now, I remember one of the stories that you told me back in December was about a father, a single father who was permanently disabled. He was paralyzed from the waist down and victim of a shooting. And after a lot of rehab and hard work on his part, he turned his life around, but he found that he was being prevented from seeing his daughter. And you stepped in to represent him. And tell us about that case, because I know you had said it was really emotional and it was, it really struck a chord with you.
It was a very sad case. I was representing a disabled father, and his child wanted a father, and this dad wanted to be a dad. And after a tough fight, I reconnected him, and it was really important to me on a personal level to reconnect them. It was very heart-wrenching when they reconnected. The daughter and father, they were in tears. They were so happy to be reconnected. And what concerned me is I thought the mother in that situation was embarrassed because of the father's disability and didn't want him to have any contact with their child because of her feelings of embarrassment for his disability, when she should have been proud of him for working and struggling and being able to live with that disability. It is a sad case, but it had a happy ending for that dad and for his child.
And was that a difficult fight for you when you had to represent him in court, correct? Was that a difficult challenge?
It was a difficult challenge, but I didn't give up. But it shouldn't have been a difficult challenge. I mean, obviously, it was pretty clear to me what the result needed to be, and not just for my client, but for his child. It was obvious to me. Emotionally, it was very important to this child. But due to the problems in the legal system, it didn't happen automatically. And it took a lot of strategic planning and a lot of legal maneuvering to get the right result.
Another case that you talked to me was about a terrible court-ordered visitation in which the father's visitation with his son had to be supervised by a police officer. And, when police are involved, the first thing you think about is a crime. Police are great people, but when kids are involved, maybe the impression is that, oh, the policeman has to be here. Why? To protect me? That had to be a tough case, right?
It was a tough case, and I was not the first lawyer. My predecessor, the previous lawyer, had agreed to a court order providing that type of supervision by law enforcement, which I found really troubling because the child, I thought, saw the dad as a criminal. Why does dad have to be monitored by a police officer to visit me? And actually, that dad, I was in contact with him before this interview, and I'm hoping to talk to him tomorrow. I'm very, very, very upset that that father was thrown into a supervised visitation setting with a police officer. But I was able to undo that agreed order, and eventually the visitation did not require supervision by a police officer.
And I bet fathers don't even think about these little nuances that have such a big impact on their kids. And if I think any father out there, and again, we're talking with dad's rights attorneys, known nationally as an author. He does a lot of speaking all over the country. He helps fathers get their rights. He also does a radio talk show, by the way. It's 9 a.m. on Saturday morning for an hour on Power 92.3 FM radio, which I'm sure people can probably find even online if they're not in the Chicago area. And it's a very informative thing. So parents or fathers, when they approach you, do they know what it is that they need? I mean, you have to help them, right? Because somebody like me, I'm not a specialist in law. I don't know all my rights. I assume them until I have a problem, right? And then I have to go to somebody like you. Most people come to you like that? They really don't know what all their rights are until they talk to you.
Most of my clients that come to me do not know what their rights are. I represent lawyers that come to me that don't know what their rights are. And they're brilliant lawyers, but when they're emotionally entangled in family litigation, they lose their objectivity, and it's very difficult for them. But my goal is to educate them as to what their legal rights are and develop a strategy for success. And sometimes the strategy changes because in the litigation process, things change, and lawyers need to develop modifications in their strategies if necessary because of changes in factual circumstances. But the goal is doing the right thing and getting a great result.
Now, I know also you were involved, I believe, in legislation that was introduced to the Illinois House back in 2017. And the purpose of that legislation, and maybe you help us understand that, was to ensure that fathers, mothers in divorce cases, separated, whatever the circumstance, that they both were treated equally, that they had equal parenting rights. What does that mean exactly, equal parenting rights?
Well, every state, and specifically Illinois, must have a law on equal parenting time to protect not just the rights of fathers, but the rights of children, the rights of a family. Because whenever there's any litigation initiated in family law, there should be a presumption that shared parenting, equal parenting is in the best interest of the children, because the best parent is both parents. The best parent is both parents. So we need to start out all litigation with the presumption that there should be equal parenting time. Now, obviously, that is a presumption that should be rebutted if there's clear and convincing evidence to the contrary. But every case must start out with equal protection, due process, and no gender should be treated differently, because that is contrary to the best interest of children.
What happened to that law, that legislation from 2017? Was it passed, or what's the status?
No, it wasn't passed. And I've spoken to my friend, Representative LaShawn Ford from the House of Representatives in Illinois, and he knows that I'm a big supporter of this legislation, and he knows that I'm a firm believer this needs to become law. And it's turned into a multiple year legislative battle, but I'm not going to give up on this, because I believe this is absolutely necessary for Illinois fathers, children, families, and mothers. Because if mothers love their children, fathers love their children, the best thing to do is focus on what's in the best interest of the children. And starting off any case where there is no presumption that equal parenting time is in the best interest of the children can create conflict, intense conflict. We don't want to start any case off with intense conflict. We want to diffuse conflict, because children are the ultimate victims in these types of cases if their best interests aren't the key focus.
Jeffrey, without this law, what happens when this goes to court? Without this law, what happens?
Unfortunately, there are too many parents, especially in cases where there's a potential for high conflict. Without this new law, they feel psychologically compelled to fight and show they're the best parent, instead of trying to cooperatively come up with a solution to co-parent for the best interest of the children. That's a significant problem, and that's why we need to change the law so there's a presumption that equal parenting time is in the best interest of the children. Because psychologically, without it, a lot of parents feel the need to show they're better and the other parent is evil or bad or an abuser, when that may not even be the case. And it could lead to fraud, perjury, parental alienation, psychological evaluations of children, guardian ad litem's getting appointed, and then the fees being saddled to families that may have financial struggles. So this law could be very helpful to families, children, mothers, and fathers. And it could not only diffuse conflict, it could proactively, in certain cases, keep conflict from starting.
And I can see when two people are married for many years and then suddenly there's a break or the marriage falls apart, there's a lot of anger. And it sounds like what you're talking about is nobody should let that anger get in the way of their responsibility as parents to their children. That you got to replace that anger with recognizing that both have parental rights and responsibilities for their kids. That's what it sounds like.
I agree with you 100%. That's exactly what it's all about. Exactly.
And this topic, by the way, we're talking with Jeffery Leving, and his website is dadsrights.com. He's an author. He has his radio show every Saturday on 92.3 FM in Chicago at 9 a.m. You want to listen to that. You wrote a column about it this past week that was published in the Chicago Sun-Times, and it was picked up by a number of papers. I saw it online. So if people want to find you, they should go online and look up Jeffery Leving, Dad's Rights, and you can find that column. You know, the interesting thing to me about you, Jeffrey, is when we talk about this topic, we're not talking about you defend fathers, but you're not against the mother. people might just say, oh, he's father's rights. He's just trying to take away rights from the mother. You're not trying to take away rights from the mother. You're trying to give rights to the father to make sure that the father's rights are there so the kids benefit. That's what it sounds like you're saying.
Absolutely. I think mothers are critical in parenting. I think fathers are critical in parenting. I think every child should have the opportunity to have a great mother and a great father. And I don't believe any child should lose a dad because of gender bias or parental alienation or something not working in the system, because our children are the future of our society. And that's really, really important. And we don't want to have anything in our system that can create fathers to become an endangered species, because paternal involvement can have great effects, positive effects on children. We're talking about crime right now. People are criticizing Chicago and complaining about the murder rate and the problem with crime in Chicago. Well, if you look at these statistics, the most reliable predictor of crime in America is father absence. So if we're really worried about crime, we can't look at it without addressing the issue of correcting the problem of increasing crime, without looking at the issue is how to get fathers reconnected with their children, instead of pushing fathers out of their lives and locking them up for non-payment of child support if they're dead broke and unemployed.
That's amazing. Jeffery Leving is my guest on this podcast. He's a nationally recognized father's rights and family law attorney. His website is dadsrights.com. I believe your phone number is 312-702-0862. I hope I got that right, Jeffrey.
Well, I have a lot of phone numbers, but the one that I prefer,
Go ahead.
312-356-DADS, multiple phone numbers, but this one is very important, 312-356-DADS, DADS. And I also use hashtag DADS in my social media because it speaks volumes.
And you've written several books. We can end our interview, but tell us about a couple of the books that fathers who find themselves in this situation, if they want to start the road to equal parenting rights, maybe they can pick up one of your books. Do you have one that you'd recommend? I'm sure you have a number of books, but which one should they get?
Father's Rights. This is the first book I've written. Pages 46 and 47 is great statistics on father absence. It's actually been published in various languages. It's been published in Chinese.
Wow.
It's also been published in Spanish. If I could have the one in Spanish, I'd appreciate it, because I have the books I've written behind me. And this is Father's Rights in Spanish, Los Derechos del Padre in Spanish. And I also wrote Divorce Wars. And I also wrote How to Be a Good Divorced Dad. Now, How to Be a Good Divorced Dad is a great book. And I actually received a lot of good endorsements. I have one letter here from President Obama speaking very highly of the book. I have a resolution from the House of Representatives in the state of Illinois supporting the book. And I also have one from Cardinal Francis George endorsing the book. Very proud of the book. And also Divorce Wars is a hard-hitting book. If you have a copy of that, I could hand me, thank you. And this is another book I wrote, Divorce Wars. So these are books that I'm hoping could lead to legislative initiatives, gender fairness, and ensure that fathers are treated fairly and children are protected and children are safe from harm and abusive situations.
We're talking with Jeffery M. Leving. His website is dadsrights.com. Every Saturday at 9 a.m., he's on 92.3 FM radio, Power 92.3 FM radio, talking about dad's rights. And what was that phone number again? You said, give us again, just so our listeners, if they need this, your help.
Area code 312-356-DADS. That's 312-356-DADS. And also, our listeners can follow me on Twitter at Dad's Rights, like me on Facebook, Dad's Rights, or look me up on Instagram, Dad's Rights. The social media is very powerful and could be very valuable in social change. Social change is critical.
So a father who may find himself in a situation where he's not being able to see his children, he needs to take that first step and call you. That's really
Take the
clear.
first step. And if you can dream it, you can do it.
All right, Jeffery Leving, my buddy, thank you so much for joining us. It's really been a pleasure talking to you.
Same here.